Hey, y'all, a little inside baseball for you on the show. I actually record the show, obviously, before you view it on Monday. And because I like my Sundays off, I typically record Monday's video episode either Saturday or Friday. And it just so happens that obviously there was a pretty big event this Saturday. And listening to today's show, you actually won't hear it mentioned at all, despite the fact that at the beginning of the show, I actually talked about how the presidential election, the top of the ballot, will affect the down ballot and the Democrats' chances of picking up seats in our state legislature this election season. So, sorry that it kind of seems like some obvious things are missing from today's show. Don't worry, we'll be back here tomorrow, and I will obviously be more than willing to let you all know how I feel about what's going on right now in our nation. I have a lot of things to say about it, so make sure you tune in tomorrow.
Conservative, constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, we'll kick off our first part of an overall series covering the contested races in Kentucky for the State House and State Senate. This is just going to be one of several segments on this, so you want to make sure you're tuning into the Andrew Cooperrider Show each and every day. If you're coming across this on the radio or TV and you say, hey, I kind of like this, I want to listen to it more often, well, you can head on over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com and hit the Listen Now tab. It'll show you all the different places where you can tune in. Also, you can reach out to the show by hitting the Contact tab there. You can also email us at info@theandrewshow.com. But outside of just digging into that first segment on elections going on for the general here in Kentucky, we also see that Ford has announced that they're eyeing up a new plant to be put in place in Shelbyville. And of course, you know, state's probably very excited to announce another one of these massive investments from a automobile manufacturing plant coming into Kentucky, while ignoring the fact that when you look at the incentives the state's handing out, as well as the cash handouts as well, it's almost like the Kentucky taxpayers completely shouldering the entire investment for them. Also, we see an op-ed coming out of the Courier-Journal that says, move aside Biden and Trump, Andy Beshear should be president. We'll take a look at that op-ed and see, well, how much of it's true, how much of it is delusion, and how much of it is factual. We'll be having all that and more today. But before I dig down into those stories, I do want to take a second here to talk about how the national politics side of things does affect local level elections. And this is really the push. As you hear some more and more Democrats calling for Biden to step down, it's not really about whether or not Biden wins against Trump. You know, they're going to claim, of course, that Trump is this great and new threat to the republic, to democracy, and blah, 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 blah. But we all know that's not true. That's just campaign rhetoric. And most of them realize that. They're not getting high on their own supply, as some would say. They're not buying into their own campaign rhetoric to the point that they're going to actually believe that. What they do understand, though, is that when you have somebody like Joe Biden, who will perform so badly right now, according to the polls, and anything could happen, you know, who knows what they could do to try to make this work for him. Well, when you look at down ticket, you start seeing ramifications, and obviously those in contested battleground districts in the House are feeling it. That's why you're hearing them talk up about it. And also you see people in the Senate battleground states starting to say, well, you know, maybe we want to distance ourselves from Biden a fair amount. But it also is going to affect your local level elections, like your state house, like your state senate. In fact, it's funny because when Beshear got through running for governor and he won, a lot of the state Democrats were looking at his race and the results and saying, look, there are 20 or so House seats that Beshear won that we currently don't have a Democrat in, or 20 or so that he was able to take on that maybe we could do so as well. And they're very excited at the prospect of getting to go ahead and pick up some more House seats into the legislature. But it was already going to be an uphill battle. It's hard to compare an off-year governor's election to that of falling right in line with a normal, you know, every 2-year election, especially one of the presidential elections. And it was already going to be difficult for them when you consider the fact that in 2020, when obviously polling data showed Trump performing a lot less than he is now, and of course Biden performing a lot better than he is now, the Republicans in the state house were able to pick up a pretty massive 14 seats in 2020 when Trump was up for re-election. Well, obviously Trump lost, but they still were able to pick up those seats. Fast forward now 4 years, and they may hope that Beshear's victory last year would carry them through. However, with the Biden effect going on, it's very likely they won't pick up any seats at all. In fact, it may be possible that you see Republicans picking up quite a few more seats. They already hold 80% of the state house, and they may even be able to grab even more. That's the down ballot effect that having such a horrible presidential candidate can have on you, is that it causes a cascade of other people losing their elections, Democrats in whole losing power all across the country. It's something to be greatly concerned about. So you'd think that it would lead to Democrats going ahead and deciding that they want to distance themselves from Joe Biden, that maybe they don't want to support them as much, especially the Kentucky Democrat Party. However, you'd be mistaken. Here's the Kentucky Democrats chair making a statement that the national media will be eating crow when Joe Biden wins anyways. So they're not backing down from their support of Joe Biden at the state level. And as we dig into some of these candidates that are running against incumbent Republicans, you're going to see them buying into it as well. Now, of course, in an attempt to fight against this, we do see the Democrats talking an awful lot about something called Project 2025. And it is worth mentioning because it will come up as we're digging into some of these candidates that are running for the state legislature on the Democrat side of things. But Project 2025, for those of you who are unaware, which I was unaware it even existed until Democrats started talking about it, is basically the Heritage Foundation, which is a larger conservative / Republican / whatever think tank that put together a massive 1,000-page document full of all their ideas for what they want Trump to do come 2025. Trump is in no way a part of creating that document. You know, all kinds of different nonprofits and groups and think tanks create documents all the time. It doesn't mean that they represent the policy of anybody specifically. Of course, the Democrats will point to the fact that two of Trump's former advisors were listed in the document as helping shape the document. However, they weren't exactly very close advisors. I would tell you their names, but it really doesn't matter because chances are you've never heard of them before. Because you'll find out that there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals involved in the executive branch with titles like advisor that really don't do much at all or really have no way, shape, or form any kind of close-knit ties to Trump. Maybe instead they're advising somebody lower down in the cabinet or advising an advisor who's advising. The list goes on and on. And so, basically it's just some group made a document up. They listed some people who they can somehow tie back to Trump some sort of way. And therefore they will now try to turn that into this boogeyman. And they talk about things in the documents, and some of it I agree with, some of it I disagree with. That doesn't really matter. What matters is it has nothing to do with Trump and his presidency. But they will try to tie it, and greater hold, the Democrats will go ahead and try to, of course, turn this into their QAnon conspiracy, their own creation of this conspiracy belief that somehow, some way, Trump is somehow deeply involved with this. In fact, I've even seen some Kentucky Democrats trying to proclaim that, Kentucky's a proving ground for parts of Project 2025 because that they'll see in Project 2025 certain policies and things they talk about that have been put in place here in Kentucky by the state legislature. But it's just conservative ideas. There's nothing per se, just because there's parts of 2025 that people have implemented elsewhere doesn't mean they did it because they know anything about it. So often people will give conspiracy or deep thought to politicians where truthfully and honestly, if you spend more than 2 seconds talking to any of them at all, you'll realize they're not actually that much different than you and I. In fact, in a lot of ways, a fair amount of them are significantly dumber than you or I. They're very dumb, a lot of them, because really it's just a popularity contest. And of course, having great ideas doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be really popular. But regardless, we're going to, when we come back here, dig into a few of these races. And you're going to see in the first one, the Project 2025, I believe, coming up and about. But we'll have that, or this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Are you a product, service, or business trying to reach conservative Kentuckians? Well, the Andrew Cooperrider Show can be exactly what you're looking for. Unlike anything else out there, the Andrew Cooperrider Show reaches conservative Kentuckians statewide through radio, TV, podcasting, social media, as well as email. Reach out to the Andrew Cooperrider Show to see if we have a marketing package that fits your budget. Reach out to the Andrew Cooperrider Show at theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. You can hit the contact tab. Or you can also email the Andrew Cooperrider Show at info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. Let's be the marketing solution that your business has been looking for. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. As promised, I said I'd be digging into a few of the contested races in the general in our state house. And we'll go ahead and start off where, well, the best place to start is, as the old adage goes, if you don't know where to start, go back to the beginning. And so we'll go ahead and start with House District 1 out in Western Kentucky, currently held by floor majority leader Stephen Rudy. He's the Republican, so he's in the Republican leadership. So he's pretty high up there in that leadership as the majority, as the floor leader for the majority. So that means when you're watching, if you happen to watch the House actions take place in our state legislature because, you know, you're a nerd or something like me, well, you'll notice that there's an individual from the floor who's calling out the bills, saying, hey, let's move this bill forward, that is leading the floor. Well, that is Steve Rudy, and he's in House District 1, which is as far west as you can get, includes Fulton, Kentucky, and everything else out there. So it's obviously is far west, very far west Kentucky, and that's important to realize too. Because you are dealing with, when you're looking at the Republicans in these races and you're talking about individuals, you know, when you look for reps that come from far away to Frankfort, you're actually going to find, typically speaking, they're going to be a little more embedded with the leadership. They're going to be a little more embedded with the who's who, with the lobbyists, with everything else. And that can explain part of the reason why, Rudy has stayed in for so long, but also is a part of leadership. And the reason why you'll see this is, well, frankly, they live 4, 5, 6 hours away from their homes. I don't know exactly where Steve Rudy lives within his district, so I can only imagine, but they're hours and hours and hours away from their homes. So they're not going to go home every night. When you're talking to these reps that are within 30, 45 minutes, an hour of Frankfort, even an hour and a half of Frankfort, you'll find a lot of times they go home each and every day. And because they go home after session ends, they're just excited to go home to their family. Meanwhile, these other individuals are staying there. You start to find that those who stay there engage in a little bit different behaviors because, of course, the lobbyists taking advantage of those opportunities will throw those nice parties and gatherings and get-togethers every single night. If you're a legislator during session, you could go the entire session without having to buy lunch, breakfast, dinner, or any of your drinks if you engage in the devil's liquid there, if you engage in the alcohol, well, without buying a single one of them, because the lobbyists will go ahead and have it covered for you. And so you will see that from those reps who have to travel. And so Steve Rudy, though, he's a part of that leadership. And I guess considering all that's against him to be bad, the fact that he is staying in Frankfort overnight, the fact that he is a part of leadership, obviously you would expect him to be possibly a lot worse than he is. I mean, anytime you're seeing somebody in leadership, you're generally speaking going to get a mixed bag when it comes to their voting behavior, when it comes to what they support, what they don't. They're normally very political individuals, can't particularly trust exactly what they have to say, because that's what it takes to make leadership. I will say one of the takeaways I have about Representative Rudy personally comes from during COVID era, during 2021, there was a bill proposed in order to return licenses to everybody who had them taken away or actions taken against them due to the COVID mandates coming out of the Beshear administration. So, things like you got to wear masks, you got to shut down certain times, those kinds of things. And if you decided to go ahead and resist that and either operate business within some reasons or say, you know what, this is ridiculous. This is going to take down my business. I'm going to stay open, something I did in November. Well, you'd find that your licenses by either the ABC or the state would be gone after by the government, including people like myself, are still in court now almost 4 years later. And so in 2021, there was a bill to go ahead and end any of those actions. And if passed, people like yours truly, and like I said, several other business owners, would not have to worry, would not have to shell out thousands of dollars for legal representation, would not have to be in a position where they're unable to operate their businesses because they can't get a license from the state, like yours truly. They wouldn't be in those positions. And so what would happen is that bill would have put a stop to it right away. But as I'm told by the insider, Steve Rudy was the one who said, no, we're not going to pass that bill because I don't want to reward lawbreakers. That's what I'm told. I'm not here to necessarily tell you guys that I'm 100% factual there. I can't cite my sources to you, but I do have several sources and I trust them. And I believe wholeheartedly that he did kill that bill. So that does affect somewhat of what I think about him. But I am told also by my insiders that at least he shows some understanding behind closed doors that politics isn't necessarily personal. He shows some understanding that individuals, he doesn't hate, individuals that stand against the establishment Republicans. When you're talking about the conservative representatives, the conservative senators up there in Frankfurt, a lot of those in the establishment will hate them. And trust me, when I'm talking about leadership, like they are the establishment, right? And they literally will hate those conservative representatives. They will hate the fact that they dare stand up and say anything opposite of what they want them to do. They believe they're theirs to control. And I am told that Representative Rudy, at least out of leadership, is the most likely to understand that people have differences of opinions and different viewpoints, and you don't need to hate a person or have animosity for a person just because this one time they went in a direction you didn't want them to. Essentially, this idea that who may be against you today on this bill may be with you tomorrow on this bill. And so don't care as much about the personalities behind the bills, matter about whether or not you think the bills are good. So what may be pushing him forward may be more what that of the establishment cares about when it comes to bills. Things like, do the lobbyists and do the people pulling the strings in Frankfurt, do they want this to happen? Well, that may be what he cares about. He doesn't hate other people for caring about different things. So I guess that's what makes him a mixed bag in leadership. Now, he is being challenged by one Frederick Fountain. I'm going to say Fountain. It's spelled like fountain, like a water fountain, but maybe it's supposed to be pronounced Fontaine. But he looks to be a teacher at Paducah Public Schools. He has no campaign website whatsoever. His Facebook is full of conspiracy theories like this Project 2025 conspiracy stuff. And then to top that all off, for perspective here, Steve Rudy, last time he was challenged, has been challenged in a while, but last time he was challenged, he won this district 70-30. Like it wasn't even close. And so when he moved to the tail of the tape, you would hope then that this Frederick Fountain guy has put together a pretty robust campaign to stand against Steve Rudy. But when we go to the tail of the tape, what we see is that Frederick has raised just $900, while Steve Rudy has $130,000, which leads to the question of why do this? Why do these people run for office? You have no chance. I will never understand why people run for office in when it's a 90% Republican or an 80%, if the Republicans are winning out there 70-30, 80-20, I will never understand why a Democrat will run, or even vice versa. If it's 80% Democrat, 20% Republican, I'll never understand why a Republican will run for office, put effort and time and money into it, because it's a losing proposition. Now, a lot of people would say, well, if you view your candidacy as a vehicle to share ideas, perhaps you could influence the political system. But I think that's said by people who don't understand that politicians are some of the worst messengers out there, because when you tie ideas to a person that then loses with only 20% of the vote, well, now that person's ideas, people look at and say, oof, those are losing propositions for us. We're not interested in them. If you want to convince people about your ideas, you should do that by not running for office. Just, idea here for you. Going through some of the other challengers to Republican incumbents, with Carrie Singer, a Democrat, challenging Randy Briggs in District 3. To give you an idea of the kind of caliber of candidate we're dealing with here, because the Democrats, they really went out and they were able to recruit some real doozies of people, let me tell you. To give you an idea here, Carrie answered her Ballotpedia survey, and the first question, which was tell us about yourself, she started off by saying, I'm the mother of two with type 1 diabetes. That's it. I don't know if she's saying that her kids have type 1 diabetes. I don't know if she's saying she has type 1 diabetes. I don't know if she's channeling, Wilford Brimley. For those of you who don't know who Wilford Brimley is.
Hi, I'm Wilford Brimley, and I've had diabetes for about 20 years. I stay active and I feel pretty good most of the time. See, I do a few simple things now. I'm not perfect.
I don't know if she's channeling that guy, the diabetes guy. I don't know. I don't know why that's the most important thing she wants you to know about her. She's no campaign website. She has no Facebook or anything. Now, she does have a personal Facebook page where she does have this post pinned to the top of it. It says, a woman's place is in the House and in the Senate. So I guess, her entire argument is going to be elect her because she's a woman. I mean, she doesn't even have a campaign website to go ahead and make an argument about policies. That's the one thing. If you're going to run in a district, because in this district, District 2, where she's running against, or District 3, where she's running against Randy Bridges here, that's another one of these big districts that really, it's a little bit closer. It's more like a 60-40, 55-45 district. So you'd think if Democrats really want to take a stab at it, they'd go ahead and recruit a real good candidate. That's not what they did here. But anyways, they go ahead and they put Carrie Singer out here, who has no Facebook, no campaign website. She has nothing going on, but she does want you to know that she's the mother of two, and either she has type 1 diabetes or the two children have type 1 diabetes or one of the children has type 1 diabetes. I'm unclear, but she does want you to know diabetes is a part of her story. When we come back, we'll go over just a few more candidates and then dig into this plant going on with Ford. We'll have all that in a few short minutes. Listen up, my fellow business owners, because I got to tell you about a business that's incredibly important to any company's operations, and that's Amston, A-M-P-S-T-U-N, Amston. It's out of Richmond, Kentucky, and they provide cybersecurity for commercial businesses, and they've got dozens of years of experience working with government and private entities alike. So reach out to Amston today. That's AMPSTUN.com, AMPSTUN, Amston. Reach out to them today. Tell them Andrew sent you over. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before the break, we were digging into a few of these races where we have Republicans being challenged in the House, or just contested races in general. We'd left off with House District 3. We'd looked at 1 and 3. What we've seen both times is the Democrat candidate that's challenging them is not particularly very high caliber. We're not seeing websites, funds raised. We do know one of them has diabetes, so that's, super important. They do want you to know that. But moving on now to another district here, District 4, we got Lloyd Smith facing off against incumbent Wade Williams. Wade now has won this district last time around, 2 years ago, 70-30. He won that race 70-30 in the general. And at least Lloyd does have a real website, and it's a pretty good one too. Now, he does have a video posted that he put together here. That's kind of that new age church testimony video on his website where he's talking about some of his issues. I think what's going on here is he's got a pretty big criminal background, and he's trying to get out ahead of that. And so he spent money putting together this nice video. Of course, the video is only as good as you can get people to watch it. We'll listen and watch just a little bit of the video so you'll see what I mean. it's smart. He's trying to get out in front of the fact that he's apparently been to prison and has battled with addiction and all these other things. Let's take a listen real quick, just like 30 seconds of that video.
I reached out to my mom before going into rehab, hoping to have that connection in my life at a vulnerable time. But I found myself caught up in that same cycle of abuse and manipulation. This time, when the police showed up, it was Big Boy Joe.
So that's very much one of those kind of new agey church testimony type feels to what he's got going on there. And he does talk about himself in the video, talks a little bit about his policy, but he doesn't have much as far as issues go. Longtime listeners of the show know that this is one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to people running for office, is they do not list their issues and policies and what they want to see done on their campaign websites. Nobody does it. And it's a pet peeve of mine because I like to see it. However, it's a testament to just maybe how uninformed our electorate is on who they're voting for, that they don't even bother putting issues up because they don't really care. Because they know the average person, the average voter, doesn't really care. The average person is not going to go on Google and search their website. The average person isn't going to look at the issues page on this person and look at the issues page on this person and compare and contrast the two and see who they want to vote for. That's not what they're doing. The average person is uninformed when they walk into the ballot box when it comes to a lot of these down ticket races. They just are. Maybe you're the exception, right? Maybe you research and look at it. I know I do, which is why I'm so bothered when I see websites without issues. I want to know what you stand for. However, I do also understand that I'm in the minority, that I care about what politicians believe in, while most of our voters, unfortunately, do not. But it is, regardless, Lloyd put together a nice video. He seems to be running a pretty clean and out there, thoughtful campaign. The website looks nice. Though I will say, those of you who just watched the video, here's the photo from his website. He looks nothing alike. They do not look like the two people at all. Like in one photo, and in the video, for those of you who couldn't see it, he's wearing like a button up. He doesn't have glasses on. He's clearly a bigger guy, beard. And then in the photo we see here, he's wearing glasses and he looks like, he looks like a gay Latino man, kind of. I'm just being honest. Like, that's what he looks like on his website photos. But then you look at the video and he doesn't look like that at all. So it's really weird. I'm just saying, it's weird. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just being honest. He looks like a gay Latino man in this photo on his website. And then that's not what he really looks like, though. It's weird. Anyways, putting that to side, which you would think too, and the only reason why I bring that up is because you'd think if you're running like in Western Kentucky, which he is, that's where all these districts are, out in Western Kentucky, you would want to have like a pretty manly looking like photos. Like if you're a guy, you want to really embrace that like guy side of things in order to convince that traditional blue dog Democrat to vote for you. Because I mean, that's the real issue. That's where the real detachment has been. This is why the Democrat Party has struggled so much in Kentucky as of the last, 10 years or so. It's because for a long time, Kentucky voted red nationally, but voted blue locally. And that's because they knew those Democrats. Those Democrats didn't buy into the national messaging. The Democrats were largely just, hey, we're the old Democrat Party of yesteryear, we're about workers' rights and standing up for the farmer and subsidies, and we're on the side of the little guy, not the big man. And we believe in government working for you and not just staying out of your way. And so, people bought into that. People like that. And so it used to be that the local Democrats in that way didn't agree with all this stuff going on at the national level. But when you go ahead and make yourself appear like you're agreeing with the national platform of all this LGBTQ crazy stuff and everything else, you're driving away those base voters that a lot of the Democrats have taken advantage of at the national level, but locally you could still possibly capture them. We saw Beshear kind of do that, not because he's particularly manly, but because he kind of hearkened back to that blue dog Democrat thought process. And he also has the name of a family known for being a longtime kind of conservative Democratish. I wouldn't even call them conservative. They're conservative by today's standards, the Beshear family, because, that's how crazy everything has gotten. But he just kind of harkens back to that old Blue Dog Democrat thought process with that last name. So you think that's what you'd go after, but that's apparently not what he was looking for too much. Is just kind of strange. Anyways, though, but the question is, you're put together, you're running this way, why not run for something smaller like a magistrate or some other race? Don't know. Speaking of that, we got Mary Imes being challenged by Democrat Lauren Hines in another 70-30 Republican district. Last time she won 70-30. Once again, Hines does have a website, but once again, no issues to talk about, not really much of a conversation. So I really don't have much to say about that. So tomorrow we'll dig into a few more of these elections and look at a few more of the people being challenged, who everybody is in the race on either side of things. It'll be an ongoing segment. So I do want to encourage you, head on over to theandrewshow.com, hit the Listen Now tab to make sure you subscribe, because you can catch that show there tomorrow. Now, I don't know if you remember. I remember that, the Ford battery plant was a big to-do, right? What happened is in the special session of 2021 was called. We thought it was the deal with COVID, but as Beshear would say, we called that special session in order to approve a massive deal for Ford and SK Batteries to build this battery plant in Hardin County that's seen a lot of issues, we'll just be honest. And in that deal, we gave them a total package of around $410 million. That was a fair amount of that. We gave them $50 million to pay off a chunk of land that then we gave them that land. We gave them like another $50 million for training programs. And then we gave them $310 million in cash, just straight cash in the form of forgivable loans. And so the defense to this was the fact that, well, this will create a lot of jobs, just tons of jobs. Well, they have until 2030 to create 5,000 jobs, which leads the question of, what is a good return on investment? Because we gave Ford nearly $500 million, and we won't even start to see them fulfill the number of jobs they're supposed to put together till 2030. Not to mention the fact that the plants themselves were built largely on a federal grant. Not really federal grant, but just a handout that Biden gave Ford, giving them over $3 billion to build several battery plants in the southern United States. So the taxpayer shut out all the money basically for these factories, but it was supposed to bring in all these jobs. And in defense of saying, well, these 5,000 jobs and everything else, but it will bring in all these other jobs that will then help our bottom line. So we're starting to see some of those other jobs possibly come in, but well, it's weird. They're not exactly creating revenues for us either. It's very strange. We'll go into that story after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics.
Lexington Overstock Warehouse is Central Kentucky's best source for stylish new home furnishings. Don't pay retail. With our low overhead operating structure and big name brands, we offer the absolute best values on new furniture for every room. Shop online anytime at LexingtonOverstockWarehouse.com or visit our weekends only showroom located at 156 West Tiverton Way. Right now, for listeners of this show, we're offering a special discount for our online customers. Use coupon code FREEDOM for an additional 10% off your online order today. Lexington Overstock Warehouse, low overhead equals really low prices.
And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before the break, I was digging into how, we were promised when we gave almost $500 million of taxpayer funds to Ford that, well, we would get all these auxiliary jobs because, it's hard to justify spending almost $500 million to get 5,000 jobs by 2030. It's hard to justify that to the citizens. And so they explained that, well, there's all these auxiliary jobs we're going to get. We're going to get all these other jobs outside of these that aren't accounted for. And so that will make it worth it. That's how this investment will pay off. Now, we never had any, per se push for an ROI. Nobody ever asked for one. It's funny, the legislators that voted on this, they voted for this blindly, by the way. They didn't even know who they were giving the $500 million to. They just voted. They didn't know it was for Ford. They didn't know it was for an electric vehicle battery plant. All they knew was that some company was coming in, spending $2 billion supposedly, and they're going to give them $500 million to do it. That's all they knew. They said this was going to be the next Toyota, and if you don't vote for it, we're going to hate you for it. And so tons of people voted for it. Like nearly every single one of our legislators voted for it. Every single one. Almost every single one. I think only like 15 didn't. And nobody asked ROI. Nobody said, okay, you want me to give $500 million? When will we actually make this money back? So we're investing the taxpayer funds, So investments, generally speaking, you want to know what the ROI is, return on investment. When do I make my money back? Is there somewhere else I could park my money? And, well, that's never been answered because, of course, they don't want to answer it because, truth be told, it'd probably take much longer than it would ever have taken to make an ROI on your money had you invested it, like, literally anywhere else, like putting it into our pension systems or something else. But putting that to the side, they did say, though, there'd be all these auxiliary businesses. Well, we're getting a look at one of them, and it looks like Ford is eyeing up Shelbyville, Kentucky, to put in a $400 million plant producing a specific parts for electric vehicles. Like this really specific, I guess, part that's needed for electric vehicles. They're looking at a plant, putting a plant in Shelbyville, Kentucky, and they're going to spend $400 million building that plant. So you say, okay, here we go. It's paying off, right? This is where we're now making our money. We done dumped all these funds into the electric vehicles. So now this is where we make our money, right? Wrong. But outside of all the other economic incentives, so the company here, Ford, is going off for all the economic incentives they can find. So they already get economic incentives from the federal government and cash money from the federal government in order to go ahead and build this electric vehicle plants and retrofit and everything else. I mean, just a few days ago, the Biden administration announced another $1.7 billion for auto manufacturers to go ahead and retrofit up their facilities to do EV vehicles. So outside of all that, they're already, okay, this is quoting here from the Kentucky Business and Investment Incentives, and income tax credits alone, the proposed Shelbyville Ford plant has $170 million of the total investment approved for the Kentucky Enterprise Initiative Act. So they already have $170 million approved in investment incentives and in the refund of Kentucky sales and use tax, eligible for use on construction materials, equipment used for research and development, or data processing equipment. So they already got $170 million approved for it. So they get this money in from the federal government. They're getting money and tax incentives in from the state. Essentially, we are paying for the plants to be built. Basically, what's happening is they say, well, yeah, this plant may cost us $400 million, but in tax incentives and everything else, we'll end up making $500 million that we would have spent on taxes. So the plant basically pays for itself. Though that's not much of an investment. If you want to make an argument that tax incentives are an okay thing to do because you're okay with government picking and choosing winners and losers, because you're okay with government coming in and saying, you know what, that small mom and pop business, struggling to survive, especially in Joe Biden's economy, they don't get a tax incentive. We're not worried about helping them. Because what are we incentivizing them for? We don't care about them. But what we care about is these giant corporations that are already making, hundreds of millions a year in profits. That's who we really care about. Not the small mom and pop that's just trying to struggle and pay for their kids' school and everything else. No. We care about these giant corporations. So we're going to give them a tax incentive program. So even if you think that's the right thing to do, because you think, well, we'll make our money back on it, it's tax dollars we wouldn't have in the first place, how do you justify doing that when the entire reasoning behind us giving $500 million to Ford was that plants like these would come in and then we'd make our money off that? But if we're going to give all these tax incentives to these companies that are coming in, that we are supposed to just attract here with the Blue Oval SK battery plant, well, that's a lie then. So when you're telling us we need to look at ROIs of not just how many jobs an individual project makes, but all the auxiliary help jobs. But if you're going to give them the tax incentives, then no, we don't need to be looking at that. We need to look at the project itself. And when we look at the project itself, when it comes to Ford, and when it comes to the Blue Oval SK battery plant, when you take the 400, this is cash too. This isn't even counting all the economic incentives or everything else, all those other things, right? This is just sheer cash money. When we look at it, we see that we gave Ford $410 million, and they're supposed to produce 5,000 jobs. That comes out to $82,000 a job is what the taxpayer will have paid. $82,000 a job. Right now the income tax rate, right now 4%, that's like $3,000 a year. So we're spending $82,000 as a state to make $3,000 a year. They say, well, you got the local governments and stuff, but they're offering up tax incentives and all kinds of tax breaks and everything else. They said, well, but that'll help their local economies, but they couldn't make ends meet before. The counties this is going into, this isn't going into western and eastern Kentucky counties that have a massive amount of unemployment. These are going into places that have employment. People are employed. And so if the county governments and the city governments can't make ends meet now, throwing in thousands of more people because people will have to move there to cover these jobs, they don't have enough unemployed people, isn't going to solve their problem. They don't know how to make it work now. Now, there was an op-ed published that I wanted to look at with you all. This was in the Courier-Journal, and it dealt with an opinion piece saying that Andy Beshear's inclusive approach would be a refreshing alternative for president, saying that they want to go ahead and say that Beshear should step in for both Trump and Biden. He's just so amazing. And as evidence of this, they cite here, this is from the article, as a centrist Democrat, Beshear has proven his ability to work across party lines, finding common ground with Republicans to pass critical legislation. In Kentucky, he has worked with Republican-controlled legislature to pass bills supporting education, healthcare, economic development. This ability to build bridges and find bipartisan solutions is essential in today's polarized political climate. What's hilarious is this claim that somehow Beshear was a part of passing any of this legislation. Beshear has not been. Beshear doesn't have the phone numbers of the legislators. The state house, the speaker, and the Senate president here in Kentucky will be the first ones to tell you that Beshear does not talk to them at all about the legislation they passed. What Beshear has found out a way to do is to go ahead and take credit for a Republican moderate policy being produced by the legislature while claiming it's somehow his own accomplishments. And these people believe it. They believe that by going ahead and, like this person writing this, it was wrote by a Stephen Delco. He really believes Andy Beshear accomplished all these things. And that just goes to show how much people, they're just not paying attention to what's going on. Andy Beshear has no input on what's going on in the legislature. None at all. A lot of things he takes credit for, he vetoed. Right now he's taking credit for a surplus on revenue bills and budget bills that he vetoed. Well, that's all we have time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Thank you all so much for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow on the podcast, so head on over to theandrewshow.com, take a listen to that. Otherwise, I'll see you next week, whether you're listening on radio or TV. We'll see you then.